Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good turnout. Welcome to the Commonwealth Club World Affairs program. I'm John Else. I'm from the Graduate School of Journalism over at Berkeley across the bay. I was realizing as I was driving up here that it was 10 years ago that this war began, and it was 3 years ago that the Russians really invaded Ukraine. And I find it hard to believe that we are here this evening. The war is ongoing. There are events unfolding today, even as we speak. And we are here to see a really astonishing film, 2,000 Meters to Andriivka, which is unlike any other film about conflict that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of films about conflict, and I've made a few. And this one is just utterly unique in the depth of what it accomplishes. Before I forget, so that the leaders of the great powers don't listen in on our conversation tonight, could you turn off your cell phones, please? After the show, after the film is finished, there'll be an onstage question and answer. Stephen Salm and the director of the film will be here. You have cards on your seats for questions. This film will engender, I'm sure, very good questions from you guys, both about the diplomacy, the warfare, and also about the filmmaking. So don't be shy. Fire them up and send them out there. I think we've done it. So enjoy the film, and we'll see you after the show. And double thanks to the Commonwealth Club.
Ukrainian forces have now launched their much-talked-about counteroffensive.
Expected to be the biggest military operation in Europe since World War II.
Зараз дамо вліво 100 метрів. Плюс, Федя.
І дохай.
Просуваемся, пацаны, просуваемся!
Шева, ну, блядь, улибнись, ну що ти такий кислий? Ну,
Шеф,
улибайся, улибаємося, ма.
а якщо ця війна буде до кінця нашого життя?
Hello and welcome.
Героям слава.
Well, hello and welcome once again to this evening's Commonwealth Club World Affairs program. I'm Stephen Sam. I'm Executive Director of Strategic Communications and Content over at St. Mary's College. More important, I have the privilege of joining Mstislav Chernov in conversation here this evening. I think as many of you folks know, Ukrainian filmmaker and Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and director of 2,000 Meters to Andriivka. Mstislav Chernov also made 20 Days in Mariupol, which won the Oscar for Best Documentary in 2024. If you have questions for Mstislav, you do have the question cards, so we'll be having our conversation here, but please write down your questions. They'll be collected and sent up to us as well. So Mstislav, вітаю, дякую, all right?
Вітаю, добрий вечір.
Welcome back. And thank you for the work of making this very, very powerful and important film. One of the things that you do so well is telling true stories, human stories, and here, right, on the front line of Russia's war against Ukraine. I mean, you've talked about how this is very much an anti-war film as well. How would you explain that?
I just want to start with thanking everyone for coming here. Stepping in the war zone is never easy. And I remember the beginning when we were shooting this film, we were also screening like this, 20 days in Mariupol. So it was a strange collision of two worlds when I would fly from the US or from Europe to Poland, cross the border, get a car, get a train, get to the front line, and just be in a very different world or a different planet. And it just felt like it was so necessary to bring these two worlds together because they were colliding in my head. But also want to thank soldiers who shot the combat scenes, soldiers who are defending my home. Right now, Fedya, he's alive, and his platoon and 3rd Assault Brigade, they're right now in the Kharkiv region, which is very close to my hometown, Kharkiv, and they are what stands between Russian army and occupation of my home. That they are the reason why I have home. And further, more time passes, more I realize that especially with all the talks that are happening right now, with all the negotiations that require Ukraine to give its land to Russia or demand Ukraine to accept this occupation in some form, I keep thinking that Andriivka is part of that. And if that happens, if Russia does occupy, and God forbid if the world accepts it, then Andriivka will be lost. And I really don't want that to happen because so much is sacrificed. And it'll come into your question. It is always I'm very allergic to war. Like, I've spent a decade, and not only in Ukraine. I've spent time in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Gaza, in Karabakh, in Libya, and war is horrible. War is the worst thing that humanity ever does to itself. And of course I want to speak about it. I want it to be visible, and I want the audience to feel that. And I want the audience to feel that we have to do everything possible to prevent war from happening. However, at the same time, it's very important for me that people see that although the war is pointless, self-defense isn't. And what we see here is self-defense, which is vital. And so I am walking this, I'm trying to walk together with Michel Meissner, an amazing editor of 20 Days and 2,000 Meters to Andriivka. We're walking this thin line between honoring the sacrifice and the courage of these amazing people, but also the senselessness of war. And I think at the core of every film, there has to be a paradox. Mm-hmm. Every good film has paradox in it, and this is one of these paradoxes.
Well, and so you see visually, right, with the platoon entering Andriivka, right, raising the flag, and you yourself have said earlier on in the film, what it's like going back to villages that have been liberated where there are no people, there's nothing there, you're walking over graves and ruins, but not liberating them is worse.
Yeah, because those are not You see, there is such a deep connection to this land, to these places. They are not kilometers and names, although those are of course important. And at that point, that summer, we all scrolled our news feeds waiting for another name to be liberated, waiting for another flag of another village, because that gave us all hope. So that was very important. But also, there is more to that. There are childhood memories.
Mm-hmm.
There is my grandfather during the Second World War was fighting in Donbass. And there's that connection, because the front line, the Donbass is a highly densely populated area. The front line almost of every war was there. And so, and then when you're a kid, when you're a child, you would go to your grandmother, and not particularly in Andriivka, but the villages are very, very similar, and they're all there. And you will run in these forests, and you will run in these fields. And so seeing that this land scarred, mutilated by bombs, by trenches, by minefields, is painful, and I really want to talk about it. So it's also about that. It's about connection to your land. It's about connection to your childhood and fighting for it.
Well, and I think as the audience here, I'm sure noted, one of the striking moments is when you're having the conversation with Fedya, and he talks about how everything will grow back, everything will return, and this kind of moment of grand optimism, that everything will be rebuilt better and not Soviet influenced as well.
Yes. Also, I really wanted. We thought that that's going to make it to a film, but it didn't in the end. But there is a moment in a film when we jump out of the armored vehicle, as soldiers like to joke, to call it a coffin on wheels. Not a very funny joke when you're getting in it, but okay. So we jump out of that vehicle and we get in the forest, and you see, I notice that this part of the forest is green, and the reason for it that the battle was going through the forest and cutting all the trees, but it was going there for so long that by the time the battle reached Andriivka, the beginning of the forest already started to grow back. You really feel the nature immediately trying to rebuild itself and grow back, and I find that it would be hard to explain that in a voiceover at that particular moment in time in the film, but we felt that Fedya did express that thought anyway, so we let it just be underneath.
So you kind of mentioned obliquely, we know there are conversations that happened today in Moscow for 4 or 5 hours. We don't know what those conversations were. For you as a filmmaker who has understood, and a war correspondent who has understood and been up close, for the going on 4 years now, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What for you, what does a just peace look like for Ukraine?
Then again, not even 4, but more. It's more than a decade, and that actually teaches you the fact that it is happening more than 10 years. Longer than Second World War, you already start seeing the patterns. You understand you cannot trust promises because they will be broken. They were broken in 1994, since Budapest Memorandum. Then they were broken in 2014, and so on and so forth. So that that you can't trust the agreement if there is no strong guarantee. So I think if we speak about justice, again, I am speaking from my perspective, okay, and my perspective is very personal. And besides this, the guarantees, security guarantees and reparations, those are very important political moments. But for me personally, for human that witnessed, for the part of the community that witnessed loss that I've seen in Mariupol, families losing their children, people losing their entire life in that city, and then seeing these amazing guys giving their lives and their health for it, that sense of justice is incredibly important for them, for all of them, because we kind of live in a world of, right now, the world of brute force. And some time ago, people could probably rely on God to exercise justice. Then they moved and they relied on Hague International Court of Criminal Court to exercise that justice. And now we see that that doesn't work, and they were supposed to be international organizations, United Nations and its agencies to exercise that justice, and that doesn't work. So our hope lies right now in historical justice, at least. So, but necessity of justice is crucial for peace, because if we fail to reach just conclusion to all this, then it will encourage everyone else around the world who has a big army and small neighbor to invade and kill and wait for the reward for that. And that shouldn't be happening, because it will just destroy the entire world order. And with tools that are available now for every government, the tools of means of weapons, AI-driven robotic systems, tools of falsehood, misinformation, AI-generated content, it has never been easier to start that invasion and to justify it. So that's scary and absolutely necessary to have that sense of justice when somehow war ends.
So when you talk about it, and you talk about this in the film, when this full-scale invasion began, right? You picked up a camera, right? Fed, you picked up a gun. Did you realize then that you would become a target as well, by being someone who is trying to capture the stories?
I first have been beaten for my work during the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, actually a bit earlier, but that was like the most eye-opening. I was beaten by pro-Russian government police, Berkut.
The Berkut,
that was, yeah. So I remember very well when I took out there was like a huge guy standing over me with his baton, and I was like, I'm a journalist. He's like, oh, you're a journalist. So he hit me harder. That was a good lesson, and I think since then it just became worse and worse, because more governments around the world, even the democratic governments around the world, realize that information is a weapon. More a person with a camera becomes associated with a soldier, and that should not be happening. If we can compare a camera to something, then we should compare it to a shield. There is an attack on truth happening from all sides right now, and what camera does, it tries very hard to protect that truth. Because again, we exist in a world where truth is the truth is a minority of the entire sea of information, and we need to protect it.
So along with the brutality that this film depicts, I mean, it was clear you had to make sure you weren't going to create a work that felt like a first-person shooter video game.
Oh yeah, that is something we've been really aware of, and we addressed it throughout the entire film. And interestingly, now when we've done it, we finished it, and there were several key moments, key points where we knew we needed to follow to make sure that's not the case, that the audience doesn't dissociate themselves with something they see on the screen. However, it is quite counterintuitive. You would think if you see a battle from first-person perspective, you would associate with, but actually we associate with faces, we associate with names, with stories, not with perspective. And so Michelle and we did it together. We just tried to build a narrative in a way that would give space for quiet moments of conversations. And now, as time passed, in the beginning, I thought we were making a film about, a victory, a battle. I thought we were making the combat film. Much later, I realized that the most important moment of this film was never combat, and this film was never about combat. The most important of this film was the moment when Sheva rolls the cigarette and speaks about his wife. And when Freak tells us, about how he learned the language, that he couldn't really finish the university because he had to go to war, and all those little moments that are in the film and aren't in the film because there was just not enough space, all the little stories, that's the most important. So in a world which is on fire, I think I realized something incredibly important, that human connection is what helps us to survive this turmoil. It's the only thing that is really important, is connecting with your community, connecting with a person that is right next to you. And worse things are around you, when a death is circling around like a vulture, a mechanical vulture, that's what makes us human, that true connection to each other.
And then you also bring the film to Polona in the Khmelnytsky region in western Ukraine, right, to see the effect on the mother and the village when Gagarin is killed.
Yeah, that was necessary, and actually there were so many more funerals that we had, and they couldn't find their space in the film. The film is limited, but it is very important to show how it impacts the families. But I'm thinking about a different moment. I'm thinking about the moment that recently was 2 years since Gagarin died. Mm-hmm. And in the Gagarin's death was the beginning of this film. Like, it was always at the core of its film. I thought it's going to be a film about him in the beginning and his story. It just built itself up more and more, but his name is the last word that is in a film, so I kind of kept this idea. But we came to Polona, and it was 2 years since he died, and we went to Alex and the mom, they went to the cemetery, and then the entire family was sitting around the table with neighbors, and they were holding their hands, and then they watched the film as a community. And I think that's how we learn how to live and go forward. as we experience this all together. But again, as I said, the human connection, it works everywhere, whether
Right.
you're in Bologna or you're in that little trench, connection to your land, to your childhood, to your family, to a brother or a friend. That's the key. And I am quite pessimistic about how the world would look like in 10 years, 20 years. Hopefully I'm mistaken. Maybe it's just my distorted vision, because I spent the last 10 years in war zones, so I've seen the worst. But I've also seen that that's how humanity survives, with like being together.
Well, and the fact that Gagarin is from Western Ukraine, right? I mean, so you've traversed the whole country from, you and Sasha and Freak, the connections with Kharkiv or Mirnograd.
Yeah, Mirnograd is right now being occupied as we speak, like the Russian forces are going in.
So one of the things that is interesting for me personally, just because of the geography of Polona, one of the associations I have from my first years in Ukraine in the 90s, it was not that far from there, where I was at a missile silo when they were blowing it up after the Budapest Memorandum had been signed, right? And everyone, and the US and Russia guaranteed Ukraine's borders as inviolate. But after 2014, no one seemed to be willing to keep those promises. The Russians with invading and seizing Crimea, and the U.S. not standing by.
I guess that's not a question. I can say yes, but also I think there's a lesson there to be learned. And again, it's kind of the same lesson we try to learn over and over as journalists, filmmakers, historians, artists, that we just have to remember. And we just keep failing to remember, I think, of what happened. And because we fail to remember, or we fail to remind everyone about what happened, we keep repeating the same mistakes without learning from them. And it's not only about the Budapest Memorandum, and which it was conveniently forgotten, but also because it wasn't really the text of its memorandum does not oblige, the countries to engage, although of course that is subject to interpretation. So words matter. But what I'm saying is that even since 2014, when we knew that invasion was happening, we knew that the Budapest Memorandum was violated, and we spoke about it many times. However, as Russia conveniently claimed that they have nothing to do with that invasion, the world, or most people, most politicians in the world conveniently accepted that perspective, because they wanted to continue the business. They wanted to continue to live in a world which was not shaken by that atrocity and reshaping the map of Europe. And so we kind of failed to make that an emergency. That's how I feel. I also feel responsible for it. That maybe I should have screamed louder. Maybe I should made more, films and articles that would prepare us for what came in 2022. Because to be fair, a lot of Ukrainians were not engaged, even knowing that Russia invaded Ukraine. We were not preparing. And the same way as we see that Europe is not preparing, and US is not preparing enough, because US and Europe live in the same illusion that we lived since 2014 until 2022, that Russia does not consider us as an existential enemy, but they do. They consider Europe as an existential enemy. They consider US as existential enemy, and they are already at war. Which is most of the people here or in Europe don't feel that, and that's dangerous.
So shifting gears profoundly, because it's one of those human and very tender moments when they find the cat in Andreevka. Tell us about how the cat's doing.
Oh, I encourage you to Google Andreevka cat. You will see the portrait of her. She's big and fat and happy. She visited one of the screenings. She lives around near Lviv, so she's good. She's good. But I think that cat is a symbol. Again, I'll be coming back. Speaking about the big politics, I still will be coming back to the microscopic world. And because when the bomb hits next to you, when you are hiding in that little foxhole in the ground, that is your home, that is your mother, your world is shrinking to the spider, the ant, the mouse, the little bee,
Right.
The cat, everything that is alive, everything that is connecting you to that land. And I feel that sometimes that maybe that's how God sees us too, when he's up there somewhere, watching us, colliding with each other. So that cat is very important. And of course, from a dramaturgy point of view, I mean, I couldn't have come up with this if it was a scripted film. It's just, there's this book that is literally called Save the Cat.
Right.
How to write a good script, right? Save the cat. And it's just extraordinary that the reality gives you that present. But also the entire story is so clear. There is a protagonist, or several protagonists, who have a very clear goal, and there is a very direct, clear path to it, and obstacles on the way.
And so it's a very simple film in that way, right? I mean, just trying to cover those 2,000 meters. Yeah.
Because to speak about complex topics such as war, you do need a simple structure. Otherwise, you'll get lost in context. 20 Days was also a very simple film. It was just a countdown to the last day with a goal to get out and to get the information and the footage and news about war crimes out of the city. Very clear. And we've been limiting our perspective. Again, I have to give it to Michelle. It's, again, her mastery to cut everything that is unnecessary, to really focus up close on something that is important. Closer you zoom, more symbolic it becomes.
So there are a couple times in the film where the Ukrainian soldiers are shouting at the Russians, why did you come? And these guys don't have an answer.
I mean, they do give an answer. I don't know. I guess that's the honest answer. And I did not speak much to prisoners of war. We also try not to do that from ethical considerations.
Yeah.
You don't do that because people are under danger and distress. But the replies are quite consistent. I'm there for money. I was a soldier and I've been sent and I'm fulfilling my duty. Or I was drunk and I just signed up. That's also an answer. But it does not mean they don't bear responsibility or they don't they're not guilty of what they do, because they did take a weapon. It takes a choice to take a weapon and to go cross that border of your neighbor and try to kill your neighbor. So, however they present as if it wasn't their choice, it's not true. It is a choice.
One of the other moments that you bring into the film without kind of drawing great attention to it is the violation of the rules of war by using gas. It's just freaks saying, oh, by the way, if there's gas, use this to rinse out your eyes.
Yeah, that's, again, yes, that's something you just have to adapt to. And then when you are in a battlefield right now, there are much more serious problems than the gas, because the whole warfare changed so much that what you see here in this film is probably a time capsule of the warfare that is already not there anymore. All the drones, all the AI systems, robotic systems are replacing people and hunting people. And the buffer zone is now, the kill zone is now up to 20 kilometers at certain parts of the front line. And back then you could go to the ground zero. Now there is just no chance you can do it with a camera especially. So, and come back. There is just no way. And so everything is, back then everything tried to kill you. Now you are like in a sci-fi movie, and the chance of survival is just so small. And it's a matter of time when AI systems are going to make these choices, whether to kill or not to kill.
One of the members of our audience wants to come back to the kind of the question we're talking about on the peace deal process, right? You bring this movie to the U.S. during a time when our current administration is trying to broker a peace deal where Ukraine is asked to give up land and Russia is given amnesty. What do you think the men who gave their lives, what would they say? And those who are still alive, who are fighting that battle, what would they say about attempts to broker a peace deal?
I don't want to speak for them because I'm sitting here, and it would be inappropriate for me sitting here in a comfortable place, safe place, to speak for people who are right now in a trench. So I will not do that. However, again, as we spoke about justice, what I hear from most of these guys is that it's not just about stopping the war, it's just making sure that your kids will not be fighting it. And so however this war ends, it has to end in a way that will not start again. Because we know it did already. There was a peace deal. And Russia attacked again, and they went forward and they occupied more land, although they've been saying this is not their intention. So whatever right now they are feeling, there is also a wide understanding that this has to come to the conclusion where further attack from Russia will not be possible, or at least highly unlikely. And it's painful. It's just painful, of course, when you lost so much.
Yeah.
My wish is just if a politician who is making a choice, and I'm saying not Ukrainian politician because they know the reality, but politicians who are very far from the reality and seeing the map and percentage, I wish they can zoom in to centimeters and meters and know what those numbers mean and what those names mean.
So one of the very chilling moments right at the beginning of the film is when there's the gunfire and one of the soldiers says, "Oh, they're finishing our guys off." And one of our audience members notes that you showed how the Ukrainian military forces captured POWs, which is very different from the reports that we see again and again, how the Russians capture and treat POWs.
So these are two questions, actually, right? It's a good opportunity to speak about Piro, the soldier who is filming the first 10-minute scene. He's alive. We recently spoke with him and he said, "Mstislav, you know what? I did try to blow myself up, but the grenade didn't work." And so 3 hours later, Hector does come back for him and pulls him out. It was a miracle. So it's amazing that he survived. And POWs, again, I will be coming back to this humanity. I think it's amazing to see, and you really want that to see. And again, that's probably not it's not happening at every single moment of the battle. I cannot say that all 100% of the cases there is just feeling of warmth and brotherhood and everything. And it's of course not like that, but it's amazing to see that despite the violence, despite the rage, there are still moments when they are just like, "Hey bro, you know, what the hell? Like, why are you here?" And when the soldier comes out of the trench at the Battle of 1,000 meters after his Russian friend threw the grenade, you hear Vitos still screaming into the trench, "Hey brother, are you coming out?" Well, he's like, "Come on," you know. There is so much humanity in that. I love it. And the water that is given to this Russian officer, it's effortless. That's what I feel. That humanity is effortless. It's not like they know that the camera is recording and they're like, "Oh, okay, you know, I need to do something that will look nice in a film." It's natural, and I really hope that remains in us, despite of how bitter we feel towards Russia.
So you note in the film, observe with kind of deep fear, right? The longer this goes on, the less the world will care. Members of our audience here are asking multiple times in different ways, right? How can the U.S. communities make these stories more widely heard? What can we do to help?
Oh, well, this film is on YouTube and on PBS. So first of all, you can share. Although I would encourage you first to share 20 Days in Mariupol I think that's like a core film to see first. But I can't be prescriptive. The U.S. community is U.S. community, and I'm Ukrainian, and I can't be suggestive what has to be done or should be done. And we should decide for our own country what can it be and what it should be and what our politicians should do. So that's up to amazing people of the United States. What I know and what I've seen when I see more and more, that one of the biggest destructive features of the modern society is indifference. Indifference is as destructive as violence, especially when you have people among the politicians or among those forces who try to influence our countries through social networks, through cover operations in information space, to encourage us to be indifferent in order for them to do what the hell they want. That's what Russia did to their own people. Before they've invaded Ukraine, before they've invaded Chechnya and everything, they did teach their people to be indifferent and to know that if you go to the ballot, to cast the ballot, it will not change anything. If you go to the street to protest, it will not change anything. If you speak out your opinion in social networks, it will not change anything. So people learned, and 120 million or 30 million became compliant with this invasion. So do not let that happen to United States. Do not let it happen to Europe or whatever, civilized world. The indifference is that what will be forced on us, and we should push back. And it's quite easy to do. You need just to engage with your community, with politicians, with community, because the first reaction of any human being when it gets bombarded by the tragedies, by radicalized opinions, by fake images, is to withdraw and say, whoa, I can't care about that anymore because nothing is true. That's what we need to push back on.
And so as we wrap up here, it's a big question. You can answer it in a big way or a small way. Here in December of 2025, what gives you hope, Mstislav?
That's a very important question. Whoever asked it, thank you so much. Remember that story about the forest that is growing? My hope is to see Ukraine growing back like that. And but what I know is that the country is its people, and there is no way Ukraine can be destroyed. That's what gives me hope. What I've seen happening since 2014, and of course that's a historical process that started way before that. But I, as a citizen, my journey as a citizen started like there, in that revolution. What I've seen since then, that the collective identity has forged in these tragedies. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not avoiding speaking about tragedies in this film. Because the collective identity and collective strength is forged through tragedy. It could be forged through better, more positive things, but it is what it is now. So it is forged through these tragedies and through memories of these tragedies. So it gives me hope that there's just no way this collective identity can be destroyed, although maybe more land will be occupied, more cities will be destroyed, but you can destroy a city or a village. You can't destroy hope.
Well, please join me in thanking Mstislav Chernov. For sharing 2,000 meters to Andriivka with us tonight, and for this important conversation. And thank you to our audience here for paying attention, for your care. For more information about future programs and membership in Commonwealth Club World Affairs, you can log onto the web at commonwealthclub.org. I'm Stephen Saum. Thank you, and take care. Thanks.